Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unlock a timeless guide to life, one that's hitting inside the final, really dramatic days of two legendary figures, Jacob and Joseph. We're going to see how their story of endings and, well, new beginnings actually creates a powerful blueprint for faith, for family, and for the future.
Okay, so let's just dive right into this. This is our central question. How can this ancient family's story, their final days, give us a blueprint for how to live? We're going to use their story to map it all out, and you'll see it resonates with some incredible power even today.
So our story kicks off at a moment of, huge tension. The patriarch, Jacob, he's dying. But here's the thing, he's not in his homeland. He's in Egypt. And with his time just about up, he has one last really urgent request for his most powerful son, Joseph.
Now listen, this is so much more than just a burial request. This solemn oath that Jacob makes Joseph swear, it's a profound statement. It's about identity, it's about heritage, and it's about this unbreakable spiritual tie to a promised land that he knows he'll never see again in his lifetime.
Okay, so these four events you see here, they're really the pillars of this whole narrative. They take us on a journey, starting with this deeply personal promise between a father and son, and expanding all the way out to a national destiny being laid out for generations to come. Every single act is a deliberate move in building a legacy. But there's this fascinating physical action happening behind these words, and it's full of personal history. Jacob, his eyesight is failing him now, and he intentionally crosses his hands. He puts his right hand, that's the hand of the greater blessing, on the younger son, Ephraim. It's this powerful echo of his own past, isn't it? When he tricked his own blind father to steal the blessing from his older brother. But now, he's the one subverting the birthright. And this time, he insists it's not trickery, it's divine will overriding human tradition. All right, with the story set, let's kind of zoom out and take a look at the architect behind all these events. The text paints this really complex and fascinating picture of God, not through simple descriptions, but through all the different titles and names that the characters themselves use. You see, each of these names reveals a whole different side of God's character. God Almighty speaks to his raw power. God of the Patriarchs emphasizes this faithful generational relationship. Redeeming Angel points to a personal protector, while Shepherd and Stone, well, that highlights guidance and this unshakable stability. Now, this idea of sovereignty, it is absolutely crucial if you want to understand this story. It's the belief that a higher power has the ultimate control, and this whole idea is just brilliantly illustrated by Joseph's response to the very brothers who betrayed him all those years ago. So after their father, Jacob, dies, the brothers are just terrified. They think, okay, now Joseph is finally going to get his revenge. But Joseph's response is this profound question. It shows he deeply understands that final judgment, ultimate purpose, that doesn't belong to him. It belongs to a higher power, and he completely refuses to step into that role. And this right here, this brings us to one of the core theological statements in the entire story. What it's saying is that God is so sovereign, so powerful, that he can take the absolute worst of human intentions, we're talking betrayal, hatred, cruelty, and actually redirect it, turn it into a life-saving, good outcome. So let's see how all this starts to build. The first part of our blueprint, a practical guide for how to relate to God. And it's not based on some list of laws, but on the actions and attitudes we see in Jacob and Joseph. The story really implies these four key principles. You've got Jacob clinging to the promise of his burial, Joseph acknowledging God's hand in his entire life, the huge value they all place on a father's blessing. These aren't just abstract ideas. They're lived out as totally essential for a life of faith. This is such a powerful moment. Right in the middle of delivering these intense, future-shaping prophecies to all his sons, Jacob just pauses. And he makes this personal declaration. It perfectly captures that final principle, this posture of patient, hopeful trust in God's ultimate plan and his timing. So, okay, the blueprint covers our relationship with God, but it also gives us these incredibly clear, really actionable rules for our relationships with each other, especially when you're dealing with the messy stuff, conflict, betrayal, and family dysfunction. The first and honestly the most powerful rule for community that we see is this radical choice, to forgive instead of seeking revenge. It's the entire emotional climax of Joseph's story with his brothers. And this just brilliantly illustrates what real forgiveness looks like in action. See, it's not just about saying, I forgive you and letting the past go. It's an active commitment to provide for the future, to actually nourish and sustain the very people who once tried to destroy you.
Now, on the other side of that coin, the blueprint is just as clear that forgiveness doesn't just erase consequences. It shows that things like cruelty and uncontrolled anger, they have severe, lasting repercussions that can ripple through generations.
Jacob's words here for his sons, Simeon and Levi, they're chilling. He's not just venting his own anger, he's delivering a prophetic judgment. He directly connects their violent character to a future destiny of being divided and scattered. It's a straight line from character to consequences. This table here kind of helps simplify some of Jacob's really dense and poetic prophecies. But you can clearly see the pattern, right? Reuben's instability means he won't excel. Judah's strength points to leadership, a royal line. And Joseph's faithfulness is met with divine strength and abundance. Character, again and again, shapes destiny. And so we end right where the text itself does, with one final look toward the future, all wrapped up in one last powerful oath that's designed to span generations and even cross a desert. These are Joseph's last words. Just like his father, his final command is about his bones. It is a profound act of faith, like a final anchor thrown into the future. He is making sure that his physical body will be part of the future exodus that he believes in with his whole heart, but will never, ever live to see. So in the end, this epic family saga, it's not just a story. It's a living blueprint. It teaches that faith is built on promises you can't see, and that real healing comes from the very hard choice to forgive. It shows us, time and again, that our character directly shapes our destiny, and that we find our strength by staying connected to the heritage that defines us. And that, of course, brings us to the final question. This ancient story doesn't just stay in the past. It challenges us to look at our own lives, our faith, our acts of forgiveness, the promises we keep, the character we're building, and it asks a really pointed question. What blueprint are we building right now for the generations that are going to follow us?